Thank you everyone to be here for this talk about Spring Boot. I hope everybody knows a bit about Spring Boot already. I hope so. I'm Nicolas Frankel. It's actually my second time in Minsk. I went there like 3 years ago for JET conference. Somebody went there? No? Yeah. Okay, great. So you still remember it. I love Spring Boot. I love Kotlin. And it's only natural that I believe that both are a great fit. For a long time, I was a consultant, like developers, architect, what have you, on projects. And last year, I decided to go to the developer advocate path because I find it interesting to meet people, to go to different countries, to see how people work. Right now, I work for a company called Hazelcast. Who knows about Hazelcast? Thanks. You arrived at the right time. So we have like this old project of ours, which works very well, which is the in-memory data grid. And recently we published a new one called JET, which is about data streaming. If you don't know about it, you should have a look, especially if you work in the front end. It's very interesting. So Spring Boot. Who doesn't know about Spring Boot at all? What are you doing in this room? Okay, so in a few words, like Spring Boot, Spring, you know the Spring framework? Chut chut. Okay, Spring framework, I mean, it has been since ages. It's about dependency injection and everything is built about, on top of it. And then you have this Spring Boot stuff, which is like designed to help you start your Spring project in a few minutes. Because I'm quite old now. I did Spring project before Spring Boot existed. And so it was not super funny because you had to like create your POM, your Maven POM by hand. And then you needed to exclude some stuff and you find the right version. And then you needed to write a use case from the web layer to the data repository layer. And then, well, it took about, let's say, from 1 to 2 days, depending on the scope of the stuff. And during this time, there could be only one guy working on that. So I told my team, guys, take vacations, go away. I will do the stuff, then you come back in 2 days. And now you go on start.spring.io, you check what you want, and then you've got the project, I mean the skeleton of the project already ready for you. And the good thing about Spring Boot, it's all convention over configuration. I mean, if you have done Spring project before, you know, for example, every project had to create, well, to configure an internal view resolver because you wanted to redirect the flow from like the controller to a GSP. Every time it was the same stuff. And so somebody decided, but why? I mean, basically in Maven, you don't configure everything, you just have convention. The sources are in SRC man, Java. Why don't we have the same stuff? So now everybody is happy, right? Of course not, because people are never happy. People are always bitching, especially the French people. I'm French, by the way. And the problem is, it's a lot of magic. And people now say, but it's magic, I don't understand how it works. And of course, I want to understand everything. And there is a compelling point in that is, with annotations, it's very hard to follow the flow of the program. Because with annotations are processed by annotation processors, and there is no link from the annotation to the annotation processor. There can be multiple annotation processors processing the same annotation. It can be done at compile time, it can be done at runtime. So, partially, I admit that might be an issue. So, of course, you could read the documentation, but let's face it, we are developers. We don't like reading documentation. We just want to read the code. And the solution for that is just remove annotations. And I've talked enough, let's do the demo now. it won't fall below. So I have created a project. It's already there on my machine. So you know about start.spring.io, right? Yeah, OK. So I created the project with start.spring.io. It's a very stupid and simple project. I have like a REST controller, right? I have an entity class, and I'm using Spring Data GPA. And because now Kotlin is a first-class citizen, I didn't need to do anything. I downloaded the project as it is, saying I want to use Kotlin, and it works right out of the box. So now I will start the project, and you will see how good a developer I still am, because normally it should work. OK, and now I can go there, and I can curl, and I will have this. And I can curl for one person, and I will have one person. OK, a lot of convention over configuration. Here, for example, I have this import SQL stuff. I just create the data.sql, and then it's imported automatically. I am saying it's a REST controller, so I just add the dependency to Jackson, and then everything is done for me. So here, because it's the end of the day, and I know that you are all tired and you are ready to sleep, who can tell me where is the place where there are the most annotation? What should I remove first if I want to remove the magic? Yeah, of course. Then you don't have any application at all, which solves the problem, but not the way I want. So yeah, great. The controller, Отлично. The controller has actually like three annotation. So if we change the controller by something, we should get good stuff. And since I think it's Spring 5, we've got this root stuff. So let's do this root stuff. And because I'm lazy, I already coded everything. And yeah, I mean, I'm not stupid. Demo syndrome is too much. I will just add the static import because it looks a bit nicer. Here, if I make it a bit smaller, can you still read it? Yes? Great. And I have one root, and I will add another root. And basically, I have the equivalent code here. So you know about this stuff. The important stuff here is I'm not doing anything reactive yet. And that is very important. 1 year ago, this was only available in the reactive stack. You might remember that before there were like the servlet API, which relied on servlets, and Spring wanted to do reactive stuff, so they added like another API. But people wanted this new API for servlet stuff because reactive is great, but in most cases you don't need it. And it's hard to debug. So you still want the new functional API, but without it being reactive. And it's called WebFN, Web Functional. So here, everything that is here is not reactive at all. It's in the servlet function package. Very important. Now, at this point, I can remove this controller. I shall compile it, and because I'm using Spring DevTools, it will reload only the classes that I change, and normally it still works. Okay? So I removed 3 annotations, but I added 1. So I removed 2 annotations. I'm super good at math. Now the second problem is Okay? This is the Java API. It's super verbose. First, we notice that this, basically, we are having the call to the service, what we would call service in the old layer stuff, with the roots. So the first stuff would be to create a component to handle that. And in this functional word, it's called a handler. Okay? So I just copy pasted that. So here I will need a handler. Sorry, not what I wanted to do. I wanted to do that. So here I will create a handler. And now I can say handler, so this one is easier. Handler dot read all, please. Handler would be better like that. Read all of IT, because I'm passing the server request as a parameter. And here handler dot read one, and I pass IT. Okay? Still the same stuff. If you don't want to have lambdas, you can convert to a reference method. It's all the same. And I'm happy because it still works. Okay? As I mentioned, here there is nothing mind-blowing. You can do the same in Java. It will be a bit more verbose, but not that much. So in Spring 5.1, I think, I'm not sure about the version, they introduced like a Kotlin-specific API in the Spring framework, not as a third-party jar, but in the Spring framework, they introduced the roots DSL. And it looks super much better. Much, much better, right? So I can remove it, all those stuff, and this is the equivalent. Are you still with me? Great. Let's check that everything still works. Yes, everything still works. Great. Next step. I mentioned that here we have this bin annotation. It would be really great if we could remove it. And just as there is a roots DSL, there is a bins DSL. So let's try to do that. And we will create a bins function. And we will create a bin out of this root. And I can remove that because we don't need it anymore. Of course, we must call this function somewhere. And here we can, sorry. Why can't we do that? Can we do that? Because this is an application context initializer, because this bins methods comes from here. I didn't download the source yet on this computer. So you will have to believe me if it doesn't work. So application context initializer. Okay. Now comes the fun part. Where do I get the repository? Like in normal Spring application, you would just say here, I inject the repository here, and it will be injected by me. But if I inject it here, that works there, but I need to pass it here. And at this point, I have nothing. I don't have access to the context. So what I will do, I will do that. I will show you how, that it works, and then I will show you why it works. Okay, this works. Now, I will demo it step by step because I understand that it's a bit magic. Okay, this basically is all the steps that you need to understand that. So I have this beans DSL, and imagine I could create a person handler. That's not an issue here. And I need to pass the person repository. Normally, you shouldn't do it. Never. But you know that you can actually do if you have a handle on the context, you can do a context.getBean and pass it either the name of the bean or the class of the bean, or both. Yes? You shouldn't do it. Normally, you should use dependency injection, but you could do it. And a lot of the libraries, they do it because there is no other way. Right? So far, so good. And because getBean, is generic stuff, we need to say that it's person repository, right? And now if we check this ref method, we can see that it's exactly what it's doing. Context.getBean, so no magic. Next step. I say, I want a ref of person repository type. And here, IntelliJ tells me, you're stupid, you don't need to tell it's person repository. Everybody knows it. At least the Kotlin compiler knows it. So, and we get to the most important point of Kotlin. So, in Java, it would be possible if we had reified generics. Right? If the generics that you wrote in your signature, they would get written into the bytecode, right? But of course, you know that the design choice that was made is not to allow it for backwards compatibility reason. So basically, you can have a list of person and a list of strings, and the bytecode, it will be a list. That's why also you cannot have signatures that have different generic types, because for the compiler, it's the same, right? Here, that means that Kotlin is able to reify generics, which is not the case. Kotlin is not able to reify generics because it uses the same bytecode as Java. It must be compatible. So how is this trick achieved? Well, you might know there is a keyword called inline in Kotlin. Who knows about this keyword? A few people. OK. And basically, inline, instead of calling the function, tells the compiler to copy-paste the function where it's called. And at this point, because you copy-paste it, and because you don't execute it, you don't call it at runtime, you know the type if you copy-paste it. So we can also tell if a function, and only if a function is inline, that the generic types are reified. They're not really reified, because again, it's not a function call, but we can pretend they are. And that's exactly the case here. It's an inline function, and the type is reified. So actually, at compile time, we can just write this, and it will work perfectly. And now the next point, if we really, really want to be smart, is we will create a bean, and here, we need to specify which type it is, because, otherwise we have no clue, and especially the compiler has no clue. And then it will call the constructor of the person handler, and because the constructor of the person handler needs a bean of type person repository, it will be injected when it's needed. Everything is good? Yeah, because the first time I saw that, I say, okay, so it works. And actually what we can do is here, as I mentioned, we can use the person handler and inject a person repository, or we can also create a bean, and as I showed earlier, of type person handler, and say here, it's of type person handler. Just inject the bean that I need. Still works. Or we can try to be even smarter because we want to show off. And you can say here, I just want a ref of type person handler. It's a singleton, so I don't need to use it here. Still works. Amazing. Or if you want, you can create a bean. Well, you can do whatever you want now. Everybody's happy with that? And so we went from several annotations to like the main one, the entity because we are using GPA. And now if you consider magic, there is no annotation, but it's a lot of magic behind. The implementation is created at runtime. Who is happy with that? I'm super happy with that. Really? But people are never happy with that, so they want to go further. And if you want to go further, be ready. Because at this point in time, if you want to go further, you need to be reactive. You need to be reactive. It's not integrated with Spring Data GPA. So here I won't code anything because it's not that great. What I will just do is I will just use my version control and do that. And prepare to be mind blown. As I mentioned, we need to be reactive. And so if we need to be reactive, Spring Data R2DBC. Who is happy with Spring Data R2DBC? Yeah, not that many people. For me, it's very hard to read, but okay. We are using a dedicated dependency where you can find a lot of DSLs. I will show it later. And of course, we cannot use H2 anymore. We must use R2DBC H2 because the driver is not a GDBC driver anymore. Notice that the data.sql is gone. No magic involved. You must write everything explicitly. So the first is the person repository. Person repository is not an interface anymore that extends something. Person repository is your own class that you wrote by hand. And you need to write stupid stuff that you didn't need to write before, find all. So you need to tell R2DBC how to do a select star, because it cannot do it by itself. But you wanted it, everything is explicit now. Fun part, if you forgot block, and I did, nothing happens. So every time you must say block. Find by ID, insert, initialize, yeah, the schema. You remember, we used Hibernate under the hood, so Hibernate was happy to create the schema for us. Now you need to create the schema by yourself. Might be better, might be worse. It's up to you. And now comes the meat of the stuff. There is a DSL to have a listener, and then we can like initialize, create the schema at the start of the application. We insert the persons. This is still the same. We still have this beans DSL stuff. And now we have the web MVC DSL, where you can do everything. And here you have like a function that like works its magic. Very important. Stop. It's not a Spring application anymore. It's not a Spring Boot application anymore. You wanted it is just a main function. Now if I run it, it starts very fast, much faster than before. Formatting is gone, because in the previous version, I use this application.yaml or application.properties, and I just say indent output true. Convention over configuration, so I configure it. But now, I cannot do that anymore. However, what I can do, I can find a place where I have this Jackson converter. And because it's a DSL, and it's like compile time, then I can say it's using the code only. That is one really great benefit. And here also DevTools is gone because it's not useful anymore. So if the application can like just reload the class, it's fine. If not, then I need to restart everything. So here I need to restart everything. Fortunately, it's very fast. So I got my formatting back, and the good thing is I didn't need to read the documentation. I just needed to find a place where it was and just like use the IDE for that. So you might say it's a benefit, it's up to you. The rest, I didn't change it. I still have the person handler, I still have the person, which is not a GPI entity anymore, as I mentioned, and yeah. No! No! No? Yes. Okay. Any questions for the demo? Okay. So we went further. And we went further by using something that is called Springfoo. Not like Kung Fu, but like Spring Functional. At some point, there was like an attempt to do like Springfoo would be two modules, one in Java, Jafu, and one in Kotlin, Kofu. But actually, the guy behind it, Sébastien Deleuze, decided it was not that great in Java, so he stopped it. So basically, Springfoo now is only Kofu. You might find the two terms, they are completely the same. The really important stuff about that is it's experimental. So, Kofu is an incubator. So, they will try stuff there. You might want to try it, but it might not be stable. There might be bugs or whatever. There is no guarantee about that. And the good stuff, they will take it out of Springfoo and put it in Spring itself. Just like the Kotlin beans DSL and the Kotlin roots DSL. So you might want to find, to use it in production environments. It's up to you, but it's not what it's made for. The tenets, the principle of Springfoo is like everything is explicit. As you saw, no annotation, no nothing. Everything can be traced back to the code that runs it. It's just a layer upon Spring. There is no other stuff or whatever. It just uses the Spring API to get everything explicit. And all of this, in the end, so no reflection, no nothing, makes it possible, if you want, to use GraalVM to create native executables. You know about GraalVM? Yeah, so in GraalVM, there is something that makes it possible to transform like a bytecode application, a JVM bytecode application, into a native executable. The problem with GraalVM is if your application does a lot of reflection, then the native compilation won't know about it. And it will think that this bytecode is not used, and it will remove it from the binary in the end. And so if you want to keep it, you need to configure. And the more reflection, the more black magic you use, the more configuration you have. And sometimes your configuration can be very, very huge. And it's a huge mess to configure. So the promise is that by using that, everything will be explicit. Therefore, GraalVM, you don't need to configure it. It will be able to follow the path itself. So takeaways. If you want to go down this path of Spring functional because you don't like annotations, you don't like magic, you want everything by yourself, first you take your controllers, you migrate them to roots, then you can use the Kotlin router DSL for that, then you can use the Kotlin beans DSL for that. It's not necessary to be reactive anymore. Now, if you want to go further using Springfoo, then the integration with like normal servlet stuff is not that great, and you need to go reactive at this point. Of course, final takeaway is that Spring Boot loves Kotlin. They are going to be, it's already a lot of effort, but it's going even further, so it should be easier and easier to use Kotlin with Spring Boot. Thanks for your attention. You can read my blog where I publish weekly stuff. You can follow me on Twitter. And more importantly, you can find the sources for this article here. So basically, you can take it for yourself, play with it, and check if you like it or not, and make some experiments. So now I believe there are some minutes left for questions, and I will be happy to answer them if there are any.
Yeah, definitely we have some time for questions. If you like, you could ask them in Russian, and we will just translate. It's okay.
Или нет. Или лучше по-английски, пожалуйста. Или по-французски, если работает. А что смешно?
Let me ask first question.
No, the guy wanted to ask a question.
Great.
Hello, thank you for your talk. Actually, it's not a secret that when you write something pretty simple, you don't need any magic actually. And usually the magic is only if you're not a wizard. But if you know how it works, how this magic works, it can help you. But my point is that don't you think that if you will write the large application in this way, keeping things implicit, you will invent Spring Boot by yourself eventually?
Okay, that's a good question. So I hope that I didn't give the impression that I thought this was the way to go. I think I kept my presentation balanced because I think that right now it's a lot of people are saying, hey, we want more explicit, but they don't remember the time where we had to write everything and it was very, very boring. So the first thing is right now it's not possible to write an entire application because the API in the Springfoo is not there. Not everything is ready. As I mentioned, no Spring Data GPA. Okay? You need to be reactive. If you don't want to be reactive, you need to be reactive anyway. But if you just use the router stuff and the bean stuff, it's exactly the same. And you don't need to invent anything by your own. You can do exactly the same. Like feature-wise, it's completely comparable. So it's always a matter of trade-off. I know it's very hard to hear for people, but there is no single good and no single evil. It's just you need to choose, like, if you really have a lot of functional programmers in your team that don't know a lot about Spring Boot, it can be a good way to like move them gently towards Spring Boot because they hate annotations. Then it's a great way to move them here. If everybody in your team already knows Spring Boot and use adbeans and has no worries, then that's fine.
Okay, thank you. So what is your recommendation about which approach I should take, for example, if I will start a new project?
30 seconds ago, I said there is no grid good and grid evil.
Okay.
It's a trade-off. I don't know your context. You know, a lot of people ask me, what you should recommend? And my answer is always, it depends. And I know it's very frustrating because you need to take decisions. And you need, like, not only to take decisions, but to be responsible for this decision. So if you fail, it will be your fault, not mine.
Yeah, actually, this is a good point that it's both approach have the same rights, actually. Yeah.
Yeah, pros and cons. Again, it depends on your context. If you have a lot of functional programmers and your management want to use Spring Boot and they don't want to, it's a good way. Or if you have like a lot of people already know Spring Boot, why would you go this way? Well, just for the fun of migrating. No, let them be.
Yeah.
So the answer is по-разному.
Okay.
Thank you for the question. Thank you for the question. Yep, we have one more.
You shown very great example of configuration, such in Kotlin DSL, but don't we change magic of annotations to magic of such DSL? And couldn't be also too complicated in real project?
There is one advantage of DSL over annotations, is that if you have a DSL and you don't know what the stuff does, if you don't know what web MVC does, then you can click, you can download the source, and you can check. Yeah, here it doesn't work because I don't know. Wait, let me do it again. Yes. So you can read it. With annotations, you cannot. Like if I go to the annotation, I just have the source for the annotation. If I'm lucky, in the Java doc, they might tell this annotation will be processed by this annotation processor. But it's very hard to follow the flow. So, no, there are pros and cons, but by being explicit, you remove some of the magic. That's for sure.
And so doesn't it would be complicated in real project? And
Sorry?
Wouldn't it be too complicated in real project? For example, a lot of handlers.
It depends. Depends on your team. Really, I'm joking. I'm not joking. I know it's frustrating, but I won't bring you the truth here. I'm not an evangelist. I'm just saying this is what you can do. This is what another option. It might fit you better. It might fit you less. But I won't come and say, сделай так. It doesn't work like that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for the question. Anyone else? Yep.
It depends.
Okay, so thank you for the talk, and I want to ask about girl native image.
Yes.
So you said that we need to provide some configuration to use reflection with Growl native image. And are there any tools which can build this configuration for us?
Yes. So I don't know everything, but I know that if, for example, you are using micronotes, then if you are using micronotes at runtime, it will check the, at compilation time, it will check the path and it will create the configuration file for you. But that means that you need to add another layer on top of your Spring application. Again, perhaps Quarkus does it also, I don't know. But I know Micronote does it for you. So do you want to bring another layer in your application? Perhaps, perhaps not, I don't know. Important, do you need a native image? Because I don't know about you, but what I learned about the JVM is really good because for long-running processes, it optimizes the bytecode depending on the workload. Native images, they are very small, they require less memory, but they are statically compiled. They cannot adapt anything. Again, trade-off.
Okay, thank you.
One more question raised in my hand. Have you some experience applying of this approach in some production product?
No.
No? It's just like a sandbox, yeah?
It's like hello world.
Oh,
I'm a developer advocate now. I can do a small project and then it's up to you to make your own mistakes.
Okay, thank you.
Now you understand why I was a bad consultant, because I tell the truth, right?
No more questions? Anyone else?
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay. And